what's remarkable about this journey has been that it's taken you only 2 years. In the world of diving, that's a pretty accelerated pace. But it is something that a lot more people are taking up. Is it accessibility, affordability, or just awareness? What has made diving catch so many new fans?
Everyone's realizing that it's important to be more than the academic, more than the professional, because that's what you bring back. And at some point, that becomes your leverage, almost in some ways, your competitive advantage, if I could call it that. Is are you able to bring the sum total of your life into the workplace? And are you able to take enough joy out of that work also to then, live a good life?
If one day it leads to, hey, this is now my full-time job, how does that change things for you, and how does that change things for those who were happy to encourage you when it was a side gig, but now if you say I'll spend 200 days underwater, what does that mean?
Hard work is the most important virtue that you can ever have, and everything else is just frivolity. Even today I do still get asked questions on why don't you compete. Thankfully in diving there is no competition that I'm aware of.
Hi, welcome to Small Talk Work Play Build. I'm Subha Chandrasekharan, a leadership and career growth coach.
Hi, I'm Hasita Krishna. I'm a brand consultant and co-founder at Motley Crue.
Ever so often we realize how different we are. So here is someone who is 99% or 100% of the time on dry land because I don't know how to swim.
Over there, just to kind of clarify, over there is someone.
So today let's get a little playful, right, in our work, play, build theme. And how did it all start? Like, how did you decide that diving, and maybe you never really decided consciously, but I think what's remarkable about this journey has been that it's taken you only 2 years. And I'm guessing in the world of diving, that's a pretty accelerated pace.
Yeah,
For
especially if you're not doing it full time.
right,
Someone
right.
on a professional track in that amount of time would certainly have logged several more, I presume. But to answer your question, I think diving chose me. As esoteric as that sounds, it's the absolute truth. And it must be acknowledged. It just found me at a time when I think I was ready for a change.
Mhm.
And from that time, it's been a partnership of equals. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's also something that seems to be, I mean, I won't diminish it by saying flavor of the season, but it is something that a lot more people are taking
Yeah.
up, right? And what is it? Is it accessibility, affordability, or just awareness? What has
Mhm.
made diving catch so many new fans?
I think in general, we are looking at a generation of people who pursue a life outside work.
Mm.
And we are also looking at a generation of people with potentially the disposable income to go out and explore, travel, um, see countries that one would only see on maps in the past. But today, that's how you explore the world, right? There's that whole movement of slow travel where you really want to spend more time
Yeah.
in a certain space, getting to know and living like the locals, perhaps. And all of these are finally experiences that contribute back to who you are in some shape or form. Of course, there are the rare instances where it might lead to a very life-changing decision, as has been the case with, scuba, perhaps. But even without that, I think, and this is the permission that I feel like a lot of us need, is it's okay to pursue something only to the extent of the joy that it's giving you. Of course, being in water gives me a lot of joy, and it's a compounding relationship over a period of time, and that's why I go back, right? Like, if it felt like a job that I had to do, then I might have left it at some point. But also, on the other hand, if it's just something I want to do when I'm on a vacation, if it's something I do for a day, but then the rest of the time I'm doing something else, it's completely all right as well.
Yeah.
And I think we are seeing more and more of people who want to explore it and then figure out, do I want to commit to whatever diving means. But also, because we are a very social generation as well, I think we share about it more. Also, and irrespective of whether it's a passion project or a professional pursuit, or even something that you've just done. Hey, on vacation, I hiked, I dived, I did all of these different things. I think that's what we are really seeing. It's access, but also people saying yes to a lot more experiences, which may potentially fall slightly outside their comfort zone.
Yeah. No, you're right. Definitely, we are more open now to exploring these little things that come our way. I see, even as myself as a parent, um, I would be far more encouraging of saying, hey, let's maybe the next 3 holidays, and my daughters love to dive. Like, why don't we make that an opportunity
Yeah.
in the next 3 holidays? And that's not something that happened to us as children,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Holidays was where does a relative live, and we go there, and then you see a few sites and come back,
Yeah.
right? So definitely we are open to opening our
Worlds and our
horizon,
hearts to a lot of
right?
different things. And also today the school systems are also much more
Mhm.
encouraging. I know of, I think, about 3 schools in Bangalore alone where they have programs around
Yeah,
diving,
mine does. Yeah,
and certifying you to a reasonable qualification in
correct,
order to allow you to dive
correct,
in other places in the world.
correct.
So I think everyone's realizing that it's important to be more than the academic, more than the professional,
Mm.
because that's what you bring back. And at some point, that becomes your leverage, almost in some ways, your competitive advantage, if I could call it that.
Yeah,
Is are you able to bring the sum total of your life into the workplace? And are you able to take enough joy out of that work also to then, live a good life?
yeah. But it is something to think about because, like you said, it is 100 dives along with what is your main professional
Yeah.
role as a marketing consultant, brand strategist, etc., which definitely is a full time job,
Yeah.
right? And we'll maybe touch upon this a little later, but this journey, if one day it leads to, hey, this is now my full time job,
Hmm.
how does that change things for you, and how does that change things for those who were happy to encourage you when it was a side gig?
Hmm.
But now, if you say I'll spend 200 days underwater, like, what does that mean? So, coming back to the work aspect of it, how challenging has it been for you personally? And we'll come to the
Yeah.
stakeholders after that.
In general, I'm someone who, I mean, it's not the best of attributes, but it's the truth. And that's that I've always been my own worst critic.
Mm.
Anything that you could overthink on my behalf, I've already overthought in more ways than anyone possibly could. I seem to have a chip on my shoulder about it. It's not a great attribute, but it is what it is. Um, so this whole journey, and Subha, you've been privy to some of those conversations as well. There was a lot of confusion. It wasn't as straightforward as saying, okay, it's a vacation, I'm just going to go pack
Mm.
my firstly, diving is an expensive hobby. It's a significant financial investment
Mm.
that you're making into, at least for me right now, there's no end goal, right? Like, I'm
Mm.
not trying to do this so I can become somebody somewhere.
Mm.
It's just something I enjoy. The process of storytelling using underwater themes and elements. Also, it's a deeply spiritual experience for me. So I guess it's almost like going on that pilgrimage over and over again.
Mm.
But to come to those conclusions took a lot of time because I also grew up with the conditioning, and I have believed in that conditioning myself, that you need to work hard for a certain amount of time in your life, and only then you're allowed to take a break.
Yeah.
Or that, hard work is the most important virtue that you can ever have, and everything else is just,
Yeah.
frivolity.
Correct.
Even today, I do still get asked questions on why don't you compete. Thankfully, in diving, there is no competition that I'm aware of,
Uh,
which is a good thing
oh,
because you are.
that's another element I didn't think of, that there could be these passions
Yeah.
or these pursuits where then it becomes a competitive element
Yeah,
by
yeah.
itself.
Because I'm just trying to think, I mean, what would you compete on? Like your air consumption? I don't think that's a healthy way of approaching that whole
Uh,
equation. So, good thing that there's no sort of, of course, you could be on the professional track and you could, make some decisions on that front. But all of these things, and that's where I said I have overthought this from as many angles as it could potentially be overthought. And I still seem to come up with things. It's just that the intensity of those feelings has sort of maybe mellowed over a
mm,
period of time, and it has become a very slow gradual shift in how I live. So there are no, unfortunately, I don't have any easy answers for how do you do it. It just takes the time that it takes, and the process that it takes.
sure, sure. No, I get that, but I'm wondering, and I do know that you do it. There is a lot of, working with your stakeholders in a way,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Whether it is close family, and then there's your team,
yeah.
and then there's of course clients,
Yeah.
right? Who are in a sense funding these trips. So let's not forget them.
Yes. Yes.
And each one will look at it differently
Yeah.
and be supportive in different ways and question it in different ways,
Hmm.
right? So maybe start with the outer circle. With clients, how are you able to manage this? Because, like you said, there are others who, I know of friends who kind of try and run every marathon they can, right? Or there are those who are going to base camps, they're climbing mountains, and these are pursuits which you cannot do quietly on a Zoom call,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
There's a lot of background work that goes into doing some of these
And you
things.
have to physically be away
Yeah,
somewhere,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, what has been maybe like your most supportive client story and the most
Hmm.
judgmental one?
Funnily enough, I can't remember a judgmental story. Maybe it was there and wasn't told to me.
Mm,
Quite possible. But supportive, quite a few. I think I wouldn't call it negative, but the most disconnected experience maybe I've had is where someone might say, "Oh, I wish I had a life like that." Like,
ah,
which I mean, a lot of appreciation for even kind of putting it that way. But there's a lot to it. It's
mm,
not a
mm.
fun choice.
Yeah, yeah.
And therefore it shouldn't be projected as
It's
something
fun but not
superficial.
easy.
It's not superficial.
Mm,
Maybe I could call it that. But on the support front, it's actually been great because I think when you come to a certain place in your professional life, you also realize that a well-rounded individual doing a job is better than a transactional ecosystem that you could create.
mm,
And I know for a fact that all of the work I'm doing on the diving side of things does end up contributing on the workplace side of things.
mm,
People have told me I'm a lot calmer. People have told me that they enjoy. In fact, a lot of people that I work with are also on my Instagram.
mm,
It's a public profile. I mean,
mm,
anybody could. I think they appreciate the fact that here's a person who's doing creative work because that's what she does,
mm,
and not because it's transactional.
mm.
And therefore, when she comes and works with us, it's still something very hugely important to her.
Yeah.
And that's the other aspect of work that I feel maybe I haven't spoken enough about in many contexts is that being a creative is not a transactional choice I made to work in media, to work in. So, I don't have any qualifications in advertising and media. For a very long
Mm,
time, I didn't. But it's just something that I wanted to do. And
mm,
luckily, I was nurtured and kind of guided in the right way. So, I think that interplay is something that people notice, they comment on in positive ways. There's always a joke about a deep dive, or there's always a joke about, are you on land? Like sometimes I receive those messages as well. Are you submerged or are you on land? And then I tell them, no, I'm very much on land and we can talk. So, in many ways, I think a lot of people have held a lot of space,
mm.
which has been a most revealing experience for me.
Nice. But I do wonder, like, for example, a listener who is in a very stereotypical corporate job, um, and then you say, okay, I need to step away for every marathon,
Hmm.
okay, which, suddenly seems like an easier thing because marathons are typically weekends, right? But if you have a pursuit that will take you away in a different manner, is the ecosystem as supportive?
Hmm.
Because your core job, if you're an IT, delivery manager, or like me, if you were in banking, these stakeholders would not really see the value of a creative pursuit,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Hmm. I
So
see
my
what you mean.
client is not going to say, oh, she's crocheting beautiful things,
Hmm. Hmm.
so my banking transaction will go smoother, right? There's absolutely no correlation
Connection
that
as
they will see.
such.
Yes,
Yeah.
like you said, there's so much for me, perhaps it makes
Hmm.
you meditative for that time that you're doing it. It helps you build your self-awareness, it gives you a lot of thinking time, etc. But I can't quantify it to a client,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So for a youngster, or even someone who's midlife crisising and says, hey, how do I, there are some things I'm interested in
Hmm.
and I would like to devote more time to it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Is there even a slight kind of playbook here
Hmm. Hmm.
of how they could go about it? And I'm kind of thinking out loud with you because it's the corporate soul who's looking for
Yeah. Yeah. Fair.
opportunities, because like you said, the environment around us is also encouraging.
Yeah.
Like you're seeing so many creative people saying, I also do this, I also do this. And you're like, when
But
will
why
my
am
time
I?
come? Do I
Fair.
have to finish this 40-year ride and retire, and then that one day is then today?
Yeah. No, let's reverse engineer this a little bit, right? Like, I mean, if we think of just the ecosystem itself, uh, we've had the culture of offsites, and,
Hmm.
usually they're an HR led
Yeah.
exercise, or they're called a team building exercise. I know, like, even 20 years ago when dad was in the banking sector as well, And offsite was an opportunity for people to really get to know each other outside of that, environment that is
Mm.
the workplace.
Mm.
And they used to do a lot of that. Like they would just go hiking maybe some weekend. But of course, you still did it with your colleagues. So there was
Yeah.
that aspect. So maybe there are.
So, sorry, interestingly, it was a weekend to get to know your colleague. And many times it was also, but when you come back, please forget what you got to know about me.
Yeah, that,
Because I danced like Elaine Bennis over there. So please forgive me and never bring it up
yeah,
again.
yeah. But also, what a bonding exercise, right? Like after that, they know things about you that they wouldn't have otherwise. But in general, I think it's that sense of community, that sense of who do I show up as when I'm not showing up in
Hmm.
my workwear, when I'm not showing up solving problems on a day in, day out
Hmm.
basis. So that culture has always been there. Maybe there is an opportunity for us to step back and ask, how can I make the most of some of these things? Not all, of course, they are heavily engineered to a large extent. But also, when I think about, say, someone who probably works slightly more intense hours than me, we have a client who's in the retail space. So obviously, they work 7 days a week almost. But there is someone on that team for whom riding a bike is a huge,
Hmm.
passion almost. And again, it's not something that you can do overnight and come back to the
Yeah.
workplace. So how he does it is he plans his kind of annual vacations well in advance, whether that's thrice, 4 times, whatever is mandated, allowed, all of that does come into the picture. And then once that is there in place, he's left, he's not reachable. I mean, even if you want to like scream, there's
Hmm.
it's not going to reach him,
Yeah.
right? Like, and he's given people enough advance notice to say, I'm not going to be there. So please figure this out. And it's
Hmm.
been working very, very well for him for several years now.
Yeah.
So maybe that's one aspect. I think in my case, as much as I can see it in hindsight now, that I think I also engineered the narrative of how important it was.
Hmm.
And that needs to be said, perhaps. In the early days, it was a lot of achievement motivation, it was a lot of certifications, qualifications. I achieved this, I did that, because that is the way the world understands that you've made progress.
Yeah.
So if that is the only way to communicate it, then so be it. Whatever catharsis you've experienced can still be yours.
Hmm.
But, if you must showcase, then showcase a little bit.
Yeah. I think that's interesting because if I'm just thinking back to the corporate years. I mean, there was anyway too much going on with work and raising kids and everything. But if I had seen more success stories
Hmm, hmm,
of what folks were able to do even on that one Sunday,
hmm.
right? It would have been inspiring. And I think that's an advantage today.
Yeah.
And so if on a Sunday you are DJing for a family wedding or, and I have friends who jam with others, a part of a band, somebody runs their own studio, like you said, biking,
Yeah.
even if it's cycling tours are big now. It's just a couple of days sometimes, but you're, cycling for long hours, something part of a theater group. Uh, Maybe just the fact that like you said you are storytelling it and others are able to see it and you get inspired in different ways,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Hey, I can do that one other thing that I wanted to. It is possible,
Yeah.
and it may not be as intense as flying away for 5 days or 4 days, but if I even just show up for it every Sunday,
Hmm, hmm.
it will build to something.
Yeah. And actually, maybe there is an interesting future conversation there on doing multiple things at the same
Mm.
time, because
Mm.
it reminds me of a really great baker who also happens to be a long distance cyclist.
Mm.
And I believe she was a geophysicist in her past
Whoa.
life. So the definition itself of what it means to have a career has changed. No,
Yeah.
you're not saying I've been this for an X amount of time.
Yeah.
I've been all of these different things, and finally I'm showing up as me, and there is value in that individual who's showing up.
Yeah, definitely. I think that that word which we love and hate, that multipotentate.
Yeah,
Um,
polymath.
yeah, they're
Yeah,
they're real. They're in all of us.
yeah, yeah.
They're just kind of bubbling up to the
Yeah,
surface.
yeah, and we just need to not shove them back down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and which is why so much of angst also in a lot of narratives about work being central.
Mm.
And we've talked a lot about it, but I don't want to give you 90 hours because I know what to do with the 30 that I will pull out of that,
Yeah,
or the
yeah,
40 that I will pull out of that.
yeah,
And more people are doing it. So whether it's being in a startup, but friends abroad, like going skiing every weekend or dancing, or all of these, it is possible.
mm,
And like you said, maybe I think that's one of the key takeaways, that you don't have to have a goal for this.
mm. Actually, that makes me realize. I mean, I feel like not having a life on the weekend is a very Indian thing. I don't know,
Hmm.
or has been
Yeah.
historically, not so much now, because. most countries otherwise are designed for a life either outside of or after work.
Mm.
There was a friend in Singapore who told me that at the end of a working day, everyone jogs,
Mm.
right? Just around Marina Bay Sands. Or, you go to London, of course, people are like up and in work ready clothes at 7 in the morning in
Yeah.
that cold, which fascinates me to no end. But also by 5, they're tuning out. If the sun
Correct.
comes out, you better believe no one's in
Correct.
the
Correct.
office.
Yeah.
So I think we all find those
Yeah.
little gaps and niggles. And I think this is just our baby steps
Correct.
as an Indian corporate workplace to do that.
Yeah. No, I think that cultural shift
Yeah.
slowly, steadily has to happen by telling these stories. Because you're right, like anybody talks about a job in Australia, and one of the first jokes is, oh, by Friday, 11 a.m., you're at the, you're having a beer somewhere.
Yeah.
But that narrative has got built. It's
Oh, many.
reality also, and it has got built over so many years
Yeah.
of being okay with that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Being okay with that as being the life that we will live.
True.
And hopefully, here also, that from one Sunday, most sectors we've gone to a 2 day weekend, right?
Hmm.
There is actually a weekend to talk about, and that's a lot of hours that you can put into another pursuit.
Yeah.
And I think we're learning better to bung in that Monday and Friday at the two ends
Yeah.
and make it a little longer.
Longer.
Um,
Yeah. One of my friends is constantly texting me to understand how is it that I appear in random corners of the world and I still say I'm working. But the truth is I am.
yeah,
And
yeah, that's
it's
another important aspect of your pursuit, that it's not a holiday by any
hmm, hmm,
means,
hmm.
right?
Most of them, yeah. There
Mm.
are a few for both logistical and also because I am also a human and I need a real vacation from
Mm.
time to
Mm.
time. They are just vacations in the truest sense of the word. But most dive trips are usually planned. I mean, the good thing about diving as a hobby is it's over by 11 on most days. Like you can
Oh,
just
that's
come back,
interesting. Huh.
rinse your stuff out, and then you're free for the rest of the day, right? Of course, I mean, you are insanely sleepy, that is there, but
Mm.
there's nothing else to do.
Mm.
Most days it's about taking that short nap, getting up, and really just saying, okay, I mean, this I signed up for all of this,
Yeah.
and so I shall work now, and it's also something that I enjoy. So just make sure to let people know that till whatever 12 in the afternoon I'm not available, but after
Mm.
that we'll.
Which is a very reasonable ask, right? It's just a shift that's
Yeah, yeah.
starting at 12, but be mindful that I did also spend the morning doing
Yeah,
something
yeah.
else. Yeah. How has your team taken this?
Surprisingly well. I think there was that subconscious bias towards hiring people who were also like this.
Mm.
Um,
That makes sense, actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it was very subconscious. Like I would not now go on, or even like in private say that, oh, I knew all this before and I had all this figured out. But it was more of saying if I have my own thing and that means that I show up in such a nice way and I'm able to do good work, then everyone else should also have the space to do that other thing,
Mm.
and they should be allowed to also have the space to be who they are.
Mm.
And in the initial days, funnily, the challenge was getting them to pursue it because most of us come from ecosystems where it's not allowed. Like you have to seek permissions to be out for a day.
Especially as an employee.
Yeah, yeah. Or if you're going to the museum in the morning, then it's not a worthwhile use of your time. So you better make another excuse, like go to
Mm.
the doctor instead, you know. And it really took some time to let people know that not only is it allowed, it's encouraged.
Mm.
Please do something else and come back. And we know that you'll be
Yeah.
contributing in ways that I could never train you or mentor you to.
I think it also must be involving a lot of meticulous planning, handoffs of work,
Yeah.
who does what when, who backs up for whom, and that's important too, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, but full disclosure, I work with my sister. My sister is the co-founder. So I think we have that equation of,
mm,
and she dives as well. So I think both of us viscerally understand the importance of this
mm,
in each other's lives. So there's never a question of, okay, but she's off doing her shenanigans and here
yeah,
I am stuck in a 9 to 5. Like it's almost like a time where it's sacred. Like I would not disturb
uh,
her when she's doing her thing and she would not kind of
yeah,
bother me in very active ways. Not that, lots of
yeah.
things go down and things have a habit of going down at the most
Yeah.
unfortunate times in your life. But somehow, I think we've both, her more than me, I will say, made a very active effort to stay out of the other person's life. One of the very early experiences around diving was probably on my seventh or eighth dive at that time, in a different time zone. Something had gone down overnight. But the next morning, when I wake up earlier than the rest of who I'm working with, I've seen all those messages. The client has lost it, then found it, and then lost it again. All that lost and founding has happened. And then I also see a message from my sister saying, "Hey, you know what? Don't let this bother you. You're on a," and that was a holiday. You're on a holiday. You're diving. You just focus on that. And initially, I had thought of canceling that particular dive, but I went on it, and it was probably one of the best dives I've had in my entire life. And I was just crying buckets after coming back to the surface. I just couldn't stop for the next 30 minutes. I'm just crying because I realized I could have lost that
Ah,
if I had the chance.
I think that's useful insight for many of us who may not have that kind of an ecosystem,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And hence, you have to create it. You have to have the conversation
yeah,
with the important people around you who could probably barge in on this holiday and say, this is what it means to me, or this is
yeah,
why I'm doing it. I think we shy away from some of those
yeah.
conversations. Like, how can I tell you that this adds so much meaning to me individually, and
Hmm.
it enriches me, and I have to dance, all of
Because it,
Sunday, and
yeah,
it.
yeah,
But those are the conversations that
yeah.
people need to give themselves permission to have and should have also.
I think to have a platter of negotiables and non
Mhm.
negotiables, that's how I would, in my head at least, contextualize it. To say that it's okay to have that one thing or those two things which are absolutely, out of bounds. It just can't. But also to then have a few things where you're reasonably flexible. Luckily, people seem to understand.
Yeah. I think most things, if you are willing to have the conversation, it moves forward,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
So, if you had to kind of start this diving journey all over again,
Mm.
and the same things like you're building your business in parallel, figuring things out, anything you would do differently?
I think I would just be a little surer of myself, like, with
Would-
this
Oh, if
knowledge.
we could just
If we could just
have
have this,
today's
benefit of
confidence 20
hindsight,
years ago, man, I would have ruled the world.
yeah, and life would have been more peaceful overall, right? Like, I think knowing the things I know now, I think, and that's the reassurance we always try to give ourselves to say that it works out
Huh.
in really beautiful ways. Of course, in the next endeavor, I may not still believe that, and I
Mm.
only believe that 2 years later. It's possible. But I hope somewhere there's 5% of me that remembers that it works out. That would be the only thing. I think it's a mindset that I would
Mm.
rather hope to have changed.
No, I do hope your journey, and it's an ongoing one. I hope it does inspire a lot of youngsters at the workplace, and I think they start slightly ahead also, right? They already have a lot of these permissions,
Yeah, yeah,
and they already have a lot of exposure to what they may want to try or do.
yeah.
So I think that itself was a barrier for many of us
Hmm.
who are now in that mid career, because we never even gave ourselves time to have an inkling of a hobby or an inkling of a side interest. So then one day when you say, hey, I feel so unidimensional, what else do I want to be doing?
Hmm.
You don't even know where to start.
Which is where also now, with that privilege, it's also on those of us who've had that experience for a variety of different reasons to create space.
Mm.
I really believe we should do more of that from personal experience. It's beautiful to just watch people bloom into something that they were always meant to be, and that you really want them to bring that to work on a daily basis. Whatever else you offer, you don't offer. I think there's just some joy in watching someone become who
Mm.
they can be,
Mm.
because you just left them alone and you didn't like prune them and cut them and like say, okay, belong in this spot
Yeah.
because that's who you are, versus just kind of, become.
Yeah.
I think it's also on us to start creating those
No,
spaces.
definitely. Something I think I've asked you already, because watching you from dry land, what is different from the waters in each of the place? Like, I genuinely wonder that as a diver, you're saying, oh, I'll go to the Andamans, I'll go to Sri Lanka, I'll go to Malaysia, I'll go to Raja Ampat. And because I've never been underwater, isn't it just underwater everywhere? Do you have to go so far away?
Funny thing is, you're right. Right, it is water, no doubt. I mean, factually, they're all on different latitudes and longitudes, and
Hmm.
therefore they behave differently for reasons beyond even just the latitude as well. Like, some of them are tropical, some of them are not, and they
Hmm.
have different kinds of life. Reefs are very different from just diving in the deep blue. The things you get to see, but after a point, it becomes about the interaction with the marine life itself.
Hmm.
Somehow, you begin to notice that consciousness is not uniquely human.
Hmm.
On a very recent dive, in fact, when I was doing my safety stop, I saw the tiniest of crabs. Like, it was so small, and it was the first time I've seen it, and they're just hopping in mid water in front of my eyes, and that's
Hmm.
happening. I'm like, wow, I'm sure this must have happened on 90 other dives, but I'm seeing it
Yeah.
now for the first time.
Yeah.
There are some very curious fish who will come and follow you around, assuming you're peaceful enough while they're around. Each experience is different. But for what it's worth, I think I always keep coming back to the Andamans.
Oh, is
It's
it?
like home now, in many ways, both the land and the water there. So yes, while it is the same water, I think it's a different experience
Mm.
each time.
And I'm thinking it must also be a very different experience in terms of the community around those
Oh
dive.
yes, yeah,
Like you're learning new cultures, you're
yeah,
meeting different people,
yeah,
different foods,
yeah.
right? There's an opening of your mind there itself.
Yeah, I think flexibility is not an option when you're sort of setting out to do something that's so important to you. I think you become flexible as second nature.
Mm.
The people around you encourage that. Some of the most amazing people I've met in my life have been a byproduct of the fact that I dive. Friends, confidants, instructors, buddies. It's just
Mm.
been such a beautiful ecosystem of people who kind of root for you no
Yeah.
matter what. And there are bad days. It's not that, 100 odd dives, every dive was not perfect. Most dives were not awesome.
Mm.
Some of them are really difficult. You are in a challenging environment, things can go wrong. But just knowing that you're around somebody who cares about you as much as you care about them, I
Mm.
think that bonds you for life in some ways. And it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Amazing. And I think that's what, we were talking about offsites and the corporate way of doing it. I can't imagine that, a corporate leader or a people manager who experiences and takes time out to go on a ski trip or a bike trip or a dive trip and meets a wide range of individuals.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't come back the same person.
Yeah.
When they're back leading their teams, trying to get work done and dealing with different personas and different age groups and different cultures, all of this adds so much value,
Yeah.
right? And I
Yeah.
think that's the perspective that the corporate individual who feels that, or even someone who's commenting on it and saying, what's the point of
Hmm,
it,
hmm, hmm.
right? I think you can't come back from some of these as the same person.
You don't also.
Yeah, you
If
change
you, yeah,
fundamentally.
yeah. In fact, I was saying to my husband recently that the last year, the reason there was so much turbulence uh, for me in my head was that my life had changed, but I was trying to live as if it hadn't.
Mm.
And that is never a good place to be.
Mm.
So again, a lot of acknowledgement, taking time out. So we've literally, I think, said when we started this podcast now in this season, that doing things mindfully is so
Yeah,
vital to us now. We are in no hurry. We are not trying to race to a
yeah,
certain perceived idea of any success by anybody's standards. Our families, our lives, our environments, friends, doing this well is vitally
correct.
important to us at this point in time. So I think it's kind of nice. Reminds me of this time. I was just sitting by the shore of one of the many islands in the few hundreds that the Andamans has. There was not many other people, just two, three of us, and there was a hermit crab. So it's like the edge of the island, just the tip,
Mm.
and water all around, and it's just sitting there. And there was a really baby hermit crab, and he went around, or she, I don't know, for a good 30 minutes just trying to find the shell that is right for him.
Mm.
You go, you try something on, just come out, try another one, come out, try another one. And he kept at it for a good 30-40 minutes till he found the shell that he was meant to find. And I thought that was truly, I mean, one would think that the most profound experience would have been underwater, but it was just
Ah,
sitting and watching this
interesting.
creature refusing to conform, refusing to fit in, and always reaching for that comfort of being where he belonged.
Mm. Lovely. No, I think I've seen how this journey has changed you and how it has enriched you.
Yeah,
And like we said, here's to hundreds and hundreds dives more.
100%.
It also makes you a very easy person to shop or gift for, because I just have
Yes.
to find the closest sea animal thingy
Yeah,
and
and thank you for the jellyfish beanie that you've so thoughtfully crocheted. I appreciate it. I
uh,
should have worn it today.
do it for social media.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Awesome. I think a lot of takeaways for those of us who are stuck, who haven't found that pursuit. I think give a lot of things a chance. Just say, okay, I'll do it for 3 Sundays in a row
Yeah,
and see if this interests me. And when it does, and when it starts to gain momentum, then start actively planning your life around it.
yeah, yeah,
If you don't tell people that you want to do this every Sunday, then you can't expect them to make space for it.
Yeah. And funnily, that's something you told me actually.
Mm.
Even way before diving even came into the picture, I was trying to just take one day off in a week. And I told you maybe I should do like an
Yeah,
autoresponder.
I remember.
And you said just keep quiet about it. Don't say anything. And nobody will bother you and it'll not become a big deal.
Uh,
Just take the day off
uh,
because you have the agency and just quietly go about it. And it works.
yeah, correct. Awesome. This has been fun.
Yes. More dive talk.
See you guys next time. And maybe you can drop in the comments what's your pursuit? What's your passion? What's that one thing you're trying out? And of course, hit like, subscribe, follow, all of that.
You know the drill.
Bye. So, what am I bringing this week to our segment that we like to call Read, Watch, Listen? So, this is a book I picked up, and I think this is a must for every coach, definitely, but also for everybody just trying to build something, grow their career, and just start with what is fundamentally important: self awareness. And both the author, Anna, who's the coach in this, and Saurabh Mukherjee, who really take you into their lives. I mean, he as the coachee, and allow you to see firsthand how he is building his career and then building his business. And the best part is it's not just the ups, but the serious downs, and you get a ringside view. And for me as a coach, I think what was lovely to experience is that something we all endeavor for, that coaching is a partnership, right? There's no hierarchy there. There shouldn't be. And the best engagements are when it's a real partnership and both sides grow out of the conversations and the experiences that they have together. So I think this is something that if you are looking to understand, hey, do I have blind spots? How do I figure them out? How do I grow as a leader, as an individual? How do I grow my business? And how do I be resilient? And can somebody really truly support me in that journey? This is a great read.
And just kind of putting it out there, this is the book we hope to write one day, you and I. So
Yes,
there's
there is a
that too.
book that
A
we will
version of
write
this.
also.
Yeah.
So, what's your read, watch, listen?
So it's a mix of watch and listen. And I recommend if you are a diver or if you've just been someone who's curious about a world that seems out of reach to so many of us, there's a YouTube channel called Dive Talk. And that channel has probably saved my life more times than they even know. I mean, they don't know I exist. But it's a great channel. Lovely stories of diving accidents mostly, but also the things you bear in mind and also how you take this seriously. I mean, as much as it is a hobby and it is recreational, it's also you in an alien environment where you actually really do not know how to breathe. So I think it keeps me tempered, it keeps me on my toes, and it reminds me that I should not be messing with things that I don't understand.
I think that's a perfect recommendation for an episode where we really deep dive into your. I don't think we can call it a hobby at all. It's a pursuit, a true passion pursuit. And here's to the next 100 dives.
1,000 maybe.